Yeah, good morning. This is video 15 of the Tulip Airway series. This video specifically looks at a third manner in which we could radically change anesthetics and airway management for the better. Video 13 was about pre-hospital care. Video 14 was about dangerous airways, and this is 15 is managing airways that we currently intubate without the need for intubation. So we are now going to imagine a world without intubation for certain procedures. We will need intubation for things that involve the thorax and the abdomen and reflux and regurgitation, but do you really need it for a head and neck surgery? Okay, one of the previous videos talks about ENT in greater detail, but that video tended to be focused upon the cost benefits, the savings, things like that. And quite frankly, Tulip saves your department money because it will save 12 other bits of kit and replace it with a single Tulip. So you're not going to need a Goodell, a mask, you're not going to need an ET tube, a laryngoscope, suxamethonium, neostigmine, you're not going to need 2 needles, 2 syringes, a throat pack, or McGill's forceps. That's going to save you hundreds of dollars or pounds, depending on where you live, per procedure. But I'll be honest with you, to me that's completely irrelevant. I couldn't care less. Now, of course, that's a great argument for your hospital buyers, for your managerial suite, your finance department, and it's a great argument for Tulip. But I just want you to know that that's not what Tulip is all about. It's not about saving money, it's about optimizing airway control. So Tulip is very specifically about survival, success, and safety, not savings. All right, now savings is nice, but that's not what this is about. So imagine a world with no intubation. That would be a safer place. Okay, let's focus. Imagine no intubation is necessary for specific things, all right? Imagine you don't need it for ENT or oral or dental or nasal or facial, anything above this level upwards. Okay, if you didn't intubate, what's the risk reduction? There'd be no intubation or extubation, no need for neuromuscular paralysis, no suxamethonium, one of the dirtiest drugs in the world, high anaphylaxis rates. You wouldn't need any reversal, you'd just be running on propofol and a Tulip. So there'd be less intervention, there'd be no Goodell mask, ET tube, Goodell mask, less procedures all round. There'd be no throat pack to die from. There'd be no, trauma from potential McGill's forceps. How much risk would we lose? Okay, I'm coming down this route specifically for a reason. Basically, Tulip has been proven to be usable instead of intubation for these types of surgery that I've just mentioned. Because not only is the Tulip cuff airtight, it's also blood tight. And as you know, a blood molecule is larger than an air molecule, and therefore, if it's airtight, it must be blood tight. But we're talking about people's lives, and we have to prove that, so we will. All right, location of the Tulip is in the oropharynx, from the tip of the soft palate to the tip of the epiglottis, the whole of the oropharynx in its entirety, a high volume, low pressure cuff running at 40 millimeters of mercury, 50 centimeters of water. You can listen for a leak. All right, so if it's leaking audibly, then you need to increase the inflation. If it's not, you're safe. And in most cases, Tulips do not leak. In fact, I think I've heard one in about thousands. So in a situation where if it does leak, just inflate it and it won't. But on the whole, Tulip does not. And here is the evidence. The circumferential seal is what ensures the safety of this, because what then happens in a situation where you're doing, say, dental, nasal, something like this, the blood actually pools above the cuff. So it doesn't even enter the lower laryngopharynx. The blood pools up there and you can suction from that point. Now that's what a Tulip looks like. That's the standard Goodell type. Okay, so you notice the shape of the cuff and the right angle bend. But that is what a standard Goodell type looks like. All right, so with and without headbands. But this is what an ENT Tulip looks like. The one on the top has a reinforced tube. You can see the metal spring inside it. The bottom one is for ophthalmology because it, as you may have seen and you will see in the recovery video a bit later on, people don't gag. Because the tulip sits in the oropharynx and only stimulates the glossopharyngeal nerve, there's no retching, there's no vomiting, there's none of that. People swallow and then just clear their throat. Okay, now this is the vision. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to use an ENT tulip instead of intubation for head and neck surgery, oral, dental, nasal, all of this stuff. So you're not going to intubate, you're not going to paralyze. I mean, to me, that is a large increase in safety. We've mentioned savings, but let's work on safety and improvement of anesthetic technique. Safety for patients, okay?
The tulip has a principle of an oropharyngeal cuff between the soft palate and the uvula and the tip of the epiglottis at the front here. That then circumferentially seals the oropharynx, giving a airtight and blood-tight seal, which then means you can use the tulip for oral, ENT, dental type surgery, septoplasty for an example. For a number of conditions you can use this version. However, this is a specific ENT type tulip. In this particular case, there's a preformed a plastic PVC tube. Here we have another version. This is a flexible with a metal spring within. Both are designed specific for ENT. In this particular case, you insert the tulip in the normal fashion. The tube is designed to be pointing south so that it can be secured away from the operation if you are, for example, doing a septoplastry or something on the nose. In the same situation, everything is the same except the breathing tube in itself. Once the tulip is inflated, you can ventilate in the normal manner. The same situation is applicable for the reinforced type.
Now, as you can see, the tube is designed to secure itself south. That's well out of the way of the surgical field, and that's the intent. The circular tubes are designed to fit things like Boyle's Davis gags, which normally fit through an ET tube, round an ET tube. So a round tube again is compatible with current surgical equipment. But as you can see, this is both applicable to ENT and ophthalmology.
The tulip has a principle of an oropharyngeal cuff between the soft palate and the uvula and the tip of the epiglottis at the front here. That then circumferentially seals the oropharynx, giving a airtight and blood-tight seal, which then means you can use the tulip for oral, ENT, dental type surgery, septoplasty for an example. For a number of conditions you can use this version. However, this is a specific ENT type tulip. In this particular case, there's a preformed a plastic PVC tube. Here we have another version. This is a flexible with a metal spring within. Both are designed specific for ENT. In this particular case, you insert the tulip in the normal fashion. The tube is designed to be pointing south so that it can be secured away from the operation if you are, for example, doing a septoplastry or something on the nose. In the same situation, everything is the same except the breathing tube in itself. Once the tulip is inflated, you can ventilate in the normal manner. The same situation is applicable for the reinforced type.
Now, before I suggest replacing endotracheal intubation for things, messy things like ENT and dental nasal surgery, whereby there's a lot of bleeding and exposure to potential aspiration, we better prove that there's no leak. Okay, now here's a statement from somebody who's used one. Okay, it basically says, "Good morning, everyone. I had an opportunity to try the Spirali tulipi." All right. This user is a consultant in Turkey. Spirali tulipi is the reinforced version. I tested it on 2 patients during septoplasty in ENT surgery. I found it very successful. I did not encounter any bleeding or leakage problems. The patient woke up very comfortably. Since they did not experience any straining, they woke up without even the slightest nasal bleeding or leakage. Okay, well, as user opinion goes, that's not too bad. Okay, I tried a different method. After putting the tulip to patient, I dropped 1 or 2 drops of fluorescein into their mouth. Using a flexible bronchoscope through the tulip, I observed the dye remained on the cuff portion of the balloon above. When I looked into the oropharynx through the tulip, there was no dye leakage. I controlled the dye under normal light and blue light. The cases lasted between 90 and 120 minutes. At the end of the procedure, I re-examined through the tulip with a flexible scope and found no blood or fluorescein under normal or blue light again in the oropharynx beneath the tulip's cuff. Now that is proof positive that the tulip doesn't leak. That's not only because there was no blood, but also because there was no fluorescein, and that was checked by a bronchoscope. So this then came the next day. Actually, I thought about it today, and with the endotracheal tube, we only seal and protect the trachea. That's true. The back of the mouth, the esophagus, it's got blood in it. However, there is unfortunately leakage-type bleeding into the stomach with an endotracheal tube. With a tulip, there is no leakage into the stomach. So in other words, there's no blood below this level. So there's no aspiration risk. Now, the other video goes into the details of how blood could potentially pool at this level above the cuff of an ET tube and then pour into the trachea after you've deflated it. I'm not going to go into that now, but you understand that principle. Okay, now this is in addition to no intubation, no paralysis, in a messy situation like ENT surgery, post-tonsillectomy, septoplasty, I don't know, something like that. The other huge benefit is that the patient will wake up with full airway reflexes. Now, this video I've used several times before, but again, it does give you proof positive that this lady will swallow and then she will cough at about 10 seconds and then clear her throat at about, I don't know, 12 seconds. But you can see that she's fully conscious, GCS is 14, slurred speech, but she's awake and airway reflexes have returned. The reason I'm showing this again, now imagine
You put that out if you want to, Anne.
no
That's
coroner's
good.
clock.
Good.
You couldn't die if you had your reflexes. If you got a clot, you'd cough it out, wouldn't you?
How do you feel? You wide awake?
Yes.
How's your throat feel?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Now we have this lady's consent very kindly, and I'm very grateful to her because it does show you very clearly, if you play that video again, she swallows at 1 to 2 seconds, then she and then again. I mean, you know, it completely removes the semi-conscious lack of control. It completely removes the potential of aspiration. I mean, there's got to be the safest recovery possible, isn't it? So, I mean, to me, this is maximum safety at every level. You're not intubating, okay, not extubating. I mentioned those two separately because they're 2 separate procedures. Each one could trigger laryngospasm. There's no neuromuscular paralysis. Well, that in itself is a big deal. You're not using multiple airways. You're not coming in and out, you know, several times. You start with a Goodell mask. You're not then moving to ET tubes. You're not then going back to Goodells and masks. And on top of all that, you get fully awake self-recovery. And on top of that, you get savings that I don't care about. So this is a Tulip website. Everything you need to know is there. These videos are on there, both individually and, you know, as part of presentations. But more importantly, there's the clinical research. If you're a consultant, you want to read that. You need some evidence before you start doing this. The discussion with the finance department can start, though, because it will save you an absolute fortune, you know, Tulip replacing 12 with 1. But again, I'm going to tell you again, I just don't care about the money. This is about improvements of, you know, patient care, The Tulip GT style, the Goodell type, will take care of, resus, it'll take care of starved elective anaesthesia, but the ENT Tulips offer a completely unique and completely different, approach to airway management, whereby you don't need to intubate. I hope it helps.